The Captiva Library has been gathering oral history from residents who have spent many years on Captiva. I am Helen Butts. It is Thursday, September 9th, 1982, and I will be talking with Paul E Everett, Jr. Paul was born in Boston, raised in Wellesley, Massachusetts, attended Bowdoin College in Brunswick, Maine, received his doctorate at Harvard, and then went on to teach French at Phillips Exeter Academy in 1935. He served for 4 years in the Signal Corps during the Second World War, returning to Exeter until 1953. In 1953, Paul went to Indochina as Deputy Director of the mission administering foreign aid. Upon his return to the States, ill health brought him to Florida. Paul, did you come directly to to Captiva, or?
I started out on the East Coast with my parents, and they were trying to find a place for me to live in Florida because they were here. And I didn't like much of what I saw. But on the way back to St. Petersburg, we saw the sign Sanibel Captiva Ferry, and I decided I had to see what that was because I remembered from way, way back, a friend of mine had spent some time there recuperating from throat cancer, and he was at Tweenwater. We had thought of Captiva as being something like the Isle of Pines, way off in the distance. And we drove down, mother and father and I, came to the ferry landing, but there was a southwesterly breeze, quite strong, and mother, timid soul, didn't want to get on the boat. So we went on to St. Petersburg, and after they left for the north, I came over. Got the last ferry and ended up at Mid-Island Cottages, where Ted Levering was the chief cook and bottle washer.
Mid-Island Cottages, where?
That was on what used to be Palm Avenue. Right opposite where Bill and May Shannon had their restaurant.
Did you stay here for long? Or?
No, I stayed about a week looking around and bought a house.
Where did you buy a house?
Mrs. Knight's house. It was right next to what had been the old Captiva Lodge that burned down just before I got here.
And that was on the Gulf?
It was on the Bayside.
On the Bayside.
Right.
Were there many residents?
Right next to Andy's dock.
Were there many residents on the
Very
Bayside?
Few. Oh, very few, very few. The Alts were there. Then you had to go up to, oh dear, they came down in the winters. I don't remember the names now. And then it was practically bare all the way up to the Weeks. And then there was north of the Weeks, what was it? Oh, it was the Nordic Chemical Essential Oils, who had a lime grove there. And then north of that was South Seas.
And that was just the plantation house?
That's the plantation. Well, the plantation house, I think there were 5 cottages.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be a big Saturday night place for the fishermen.
Mm-hmm.
That is the bar.
Well, what year was that when you did come down to Captiva?
55.
55. Did you stay here then, from then on?
I stayed right on. Yeah. I think I have only spent 1 summer away since I got here.
Really? What did you do once you were down here?
Well, I had to earn some money, so I fixed up some cottages for rent. And
Where were those?
They were right in that area where Bob Sabatino, right across to the bay. But I found I was losing my shirt as a rental because we had only about 2 months of rental time because of mosquitoes, which were, I think we had the highest mosquito count in the country at that time. So I started a caretaking business and started looking after houses for people who were away during the summer.
And who were some of those people?
Oh dear. Well, it was Louise Clow, Kitty O'Donoghue, Althea Brooks, and Judy Cunningham. Can't seem to remember.
Well, that was quite a few people.
Of them. There were quite a few of those houses. Finally got to be much too much of them. Much too much. You were on call all the time. Adequate help was almost impossible to find. And but it was gave me a living, but that was about it.
What did you do after that?
Well, then I decided I better try teaching again because this was getting a little bit too much. So a new college was being started up in St. Augustine, Flagler College, and I went up and I was the first dean of the college. I stayed there as a dean for 2 years and then head of the modern language department. And then my eyes gave out. I had to have another cataract operation, so I decided to come back to Captiva.
Did you keep your house here? Or-
No, unfortunately, I sold it. That was very stupid of me. Anyway, Randy Harrison bought the house and fixed it up very nicely. But when I came back, Jean Hayford let me live in one of her. First of all, I lived in the pump house, and then down in Robin's Nest.
What year was that when you came back?
72. I put my first class through graduation and came back to Captiva.
And you've been here ever since?
Mm-hmm.
And you said just one summer away?
Just one summer. That was right after I bought the house. As a matter of fact, I had to go and sell some property in Maine. I've been here since.
Earlier you mentioned Norda Essential Oil. Did they have a place down here where they did anything important? Or you said something about limes or...
Well, it was lime grove, and I think it was used largely as a vacation spot for their executives and friends for fishing and relaxation.
Where was that located?
It was between the Weeks house and the South Seas property. Around about a mile, I think. It was really quite open. The lime grove, of course, was going to pot because it wasn't being used as a lime grove. And when we decided to put in the groins, when we had the first erosion control project underway, all the groins were built there. They were cast in concrete and stored to ripen. And during that period after the road went out in '59 until the groins went in, that was a very busy place.
This road went out. That was the original Captiva Road.
Yes, it used to go all the way up to Palm Avenue. And sometime in '59 we had quite a storm. I remember we were going to have a meeting of the Civic Association, and the president was walking down from his house, which was up near what had been the Gulfview Inn, and he fell into a hole and either broke his leg or sprained it, and we had to cancel the meeting.
Well, you had no medics then. How did you get him back to the mainland?
Well, there was a doctor here who was very kind to helping people out in emergencies. But to get to the mainland, of course, you had to get a special ferry to go over to the hospital. It took a whole summer to get the groins in, and we noticed considerable improvement in the erosion at that time. They were about 3 feet high, I think, as they came up onto the shore, and within weeks they were really covered. But as the groins went south, there was less and less sand to accumulate, so they began to stand out of the water as they do now. Of course, they've sunk in the meantime with the action of the water and the wave and the storms.
Had they started then, did they start to build the main road that we have now on Captiva?
Well,
or
that road did go up to what is now the post office road. It was 2-lane, but there was a good deal of land out to the Gulf side of the road. We had no problem. We thought we had no problem with that road going out there, but the other road from the post office road up to Palm Avenue was quite vulnerable because it tended to move out a little bit into the Gulf.
when did they start to put in the road that exists now?
Well, as I say, that road was here. It's just been washed away several times, or at least has been.
No, I mean the road we use now.
Well, that was the road we used.
Oh, I
up
thought
to
I see.
the post office road.
I see.
then we had to detour around down to Munson Street, I believe they called it in those days.
What's that now?
Well, it's Captiva Drive, I guess, that goes all the way up to South Sea. The nomenclature of our streets has changed rather considerably in 20 years.
Well, we noticed that in some pictures that we've seen in the past that there was a tremendous amount of foliage going out to the Gulf.
Oh yes, there was a good deal of space out there. You wouldn't recognize it now. The problem has always been how long the road would survive. Ever since I've been here, it was a question of a very narrow road, for one thing, and to see action was inevitable.
The Captiva Inn, I don't mean the Captiva Inn, I'm sorry, the library, the community center, and the firehouse and the post office, were they all there at that time, or?
Well, the Civic Association hadn't built it, so it's a house. The firehouse, we had no firehouse, we had no fire department, actually. But the post office was located down next to Timmy's Nook. The mail boat came over and dropped the mail there and carried across to Beulah Wiles, who was postmistress. And everybody gathered, of course, at noon to pick up the mail.
That was the only phone on the island, too, wasn't it, at the time?
No, there wasn't any phone there. The only phone was down at the ferry landing.
Oh, I thought it was the
if you
post
wanted
office.
to telephone, you had to run down to the ferry landing.
This was in 1955, after you came, when you first came down here,
Yeah,
right?
right. And then, as time went on, some of us felt that we should have some sort of a community center, as a place for meetings, for gathering, because our meetings, Civic Association had meetings, but they were held in the chapel by the sea. And well, there was no really good place to meet, so a few of us decided that we would try to build a community center. And we bought the land from the Wiles and raised the money one way or another. Great many contributions from the people on the island. And we finally got it built just in time for the hurricane in 1960. First thing I remember after examining it was that a limb had gone through the new roof. We were all in despair. But at that time, we built what was the first firehouse. Later on, it was added to because we needed more space for water truck. And there was no library either. But Pin Mills, the Mother Superior of our library, got people going and collecting books, and we finally added a library to the community center. The Civic Association has, of course, been responsible for maintaining the library to a large extent, as well as the gifts and whatnot from people who were most concerned with it.
Was the chapel by the sea, did they still have visiting ministers the way they do now?
Right. Mr. Edwards was the minister when I first came here, Boyd Edwards. And there have been, of course, I think they generally run around a 3-year period of preaching and maintaining the church. One of the things that bothered me very much at the beginning was the terrible state of the cemetery, where the markers, the headstones had fallen down. There was no indication of where people had been buried recently. And it was just a jungle and a mess. But the Chapel by the Sea really has tried to maintain it now as it should be.
Did you have something to do with that?
No, I wasn't.
Redoing the...
It was just, it was in the area of the community center, and I felt very much responsible for the well-being of the community center and its grounds. Of course, with the cemetery right next door. A lot of us used to go over and try and clean up things there.
Were Tween Waters, now that's been there for a long time. Were there any other places around besides for eating, I mean?
Well, South Seas had a restaurant. And then there was a restaurant up at Gulfview Inn, which was up at the end of what is now Andy Rossi Lane. And then May and Bill Shannon had a restaurant on the same street. I guess, and then you could eat, of course, down at just beyond the bridge.
So there were quite a few places where you could stay, I mean, besides eating, but I mean, inns.
Tween Waters was terribly popular.
Yes.
There's an old story that Mrs. Price's beds were so bad, and the blankets were World War I variety, apparently. Blankets were so bad and the beds were so bad that people who came to stay at Tween Waters finally bought land so they can sleep. That's apocryphal.
That would be a bad idea.
Mrs. Price was the grand grande dame, say, of the
What about boating? Was there a lot of it around? I know there were some docks, but did a lot of people come in here, or was it just not a place that... Were they afraid to...
It was mostly fishermen. There were... South Seas wasn't what it is now. It was... people came to fish. That was basically what they came for. Andy's dock was quite busy. And then Twin Palms, he put out a dock, and some of the people came with their boats. But mostly it was, people had their own boats here. There wasn't a great influx of boating, even during the winter.
What about North Captiva? Did anybody ever go up there?
Well, it's that
Redfish Pass?
well, up beyond Redfish, you used to go up there for shells more than anything else.
Johnson Shoals?
And then out to Johnson Shoals. There were big shelling areas. And then there was there were the fish houses out in the water up at the north end of the island. I remember sometimes getting caught in an afternoon thunderstorm, go in under one of the fish houses for protection.
There's still a few out before you get to Yosepa.
Yeah, but most of them have one burned, I remember, and I think 2 were destroyed in various storms. And of course, some of them were uninhabited and they just fell to pieces. But that's about all I remember on the fishing.
You don't like to fish?
I don't like to fish. I don't like to eat fish.
I'm not a mad fisher eater either. Social life, was there much of that on the island, or did they sort of stay to themselves?
Well, as I recall, the winter people, the people that came down in the winter, did have a certain amount of cocktailing and partying. But the year-rounders certainly usually weren't involved in any of that. They worked hard. They went to bed early. The early years, I remember almost nothing except an occasional cocktail party.
The people that came down during the winter, how long did they usually stay? They come in November, or they come in January?
It wasn't usually until after Christmas. They'd got down after Christmas, and then by March 15th, or the end of March, they were on their way. It was a very short season in those days. Besides, the mosquitoes were pretty bad still.
But a lot of buildings started to go on then?
Well, the big push on building started after the causeway was built, because up until that time, the ferries couldn't carry heavy loads. I mean, you could get 9 cars, 9 automobiles on 3 of the ferries. One of them would only take 8, and if they brought a truck, that cut down considerably on what was being brought over. So everything was built basically out of wood. And it wasn't until the causeway was built that they could bring over cement block and heavy construction material.
So we were just little cottages.
So we were little cottages. You'll notice that before 1965, everything basically was wood. Then, after the causeway was open, the heavy construction began.
Are there many places remaining that were built in those?
Well, I suppose a good deal of the property along the Gulf, a good deal of it was here then. Let's see, starting at the S-curve, there were several houses along there, down, including the Edwards house where the minister lived. Mary Spalding's house, though, was built out of cement that was made, cement blocks that were made here on the island, as were Jean Hayford's houses. She and her husband cast the cement blocks that were used in her main house and in the Pink house.
How'd they do that?
They had a machine, and they cast the sand was from the Gulf, and the cement, and they cast their own cement blocks. But
be interesting.
They didn't bring over cement blocks in any quantity before the
Sink the ferry.
Sink, right. The ferry, that was fun during the school period. You got down for the first ferry, and all the school kids would be on the ferry going across, catch a bus on the other side and go to school.
Were there many children here?
Well, there were quite a few.
Were there?
It was quite a noisy ferry.
How many do you suppose were on the island at that time, in the 50s when you were here?
I have no idea. I know that there were a very small number of voting people here. But the winter population, of course, tripled or quadrupled.
And there were very few cars, of course.
No, almost everybody had his car. But it was a problem getting across on the ferry. You just had to meet the ferry in time or forget it.
The changes that have been going on since you've been here, you say that there were very few people, so you certainly must have noticed a great deal of change, certainly in the past 12 years or so.
Oh, definitely. In 20-odd years, everybody knew everybody else. There just weren't any strangers except for the few people who came for short periods, renting cottages or rooms. I was talking with a man on Sanibel the day before yesterday. He said, "Whatever has happened to our little island? We knew everybody knew everybody else, and now it's a metropolis, really." And I suppose that is the thing that has changed most, the number of people. Basically, it's the number of people who have come. Changed the face of the island, obviously. The old ones are fading away gradually. They don't have either the strength or the will to keep their places, and so they're changing hands, and new people are coming.
You don't welcome the change, or?
I regret it in a way. It's a very selfish thing to say, but it was a small island paradise back in the 50s and 60s. Life was very quiet, very calm. Everybody was in bed by 9 o'clock, for heaven's sake. And now it's a very busy place. You can hardly get out of your driveway at times. I regret it. But nostalgia is always with us, I suppose.
Well, the summer months must be a little bit better for you then.
Oh, yes. Some of us oldsters look forward to the summer with eagerness.
I know. And those darn tourists leave. Who were some of the people that you knew that were here year-round, that old-timers, so to speak?
Well, of course, there were the Weeks, Andy Rossi and his his wife, Dessa. The
Belton Johnson.
No, Belton Johnson. Maybelle Stamper, of course, the artist who was here year-round. Ted Levering and his partner. Dear me, where has my memory gone? Golly.
Any amusing stories about any of them?
Well, also of course, the Island Store kept open all summer.
Was that here in the beginning?
Well, ever since I've been here, the Island Store was here.
Who owned that?
But Penn and Parker Mills, but Parker ran the Island Store. They went away for a very short time, but were here basically the year round. Parker, in those days, I think he had the only truck on the island. I believe, this is probably apocryphal, but Grandma Futch died out on Buck Key, and the idea was that she had to be taken to Fort Myers to get to the ferry, but she had died and had rigor mortis had set in, and she was sitting down, and they put the chair and Grandma Futch on the back of the truck, and if some people may remember, the main road down Sanibel was nothing but a washboard, and I understand that one of those bumps she was bumped off the truck, but I can't vouch for that. That's one of the stories. Then another one, Maybelle Stamper was a very she was a loner. She always stayed alone. Walked down to the post office every day with her little bag. But and she was a great eater of natural foods.
Way back then.
Way back then. Oh yeah. At one point, I am told she had a tapeworm, which eventually got hung on the clothesline. I don't know how many feet long it was, but it was supposed to be phenomenal.
Oh, good night.
Let's see. And then, if anyone died during a storm, there was not much that could be done about it. And someone died out on one of the islands. I don't know who it was. And they had to make a casket of some sort. So Althea Brooks donated her garage door for that purpose. The garage door was never replaced. Oh dear.
You mentioned Mrs. Johnson. Was it Buck Key that died?
No, Mrs. Futch.
Mrs. Futch.
Mm.
Were there many people over there on
No,
Buck
there was
Key?
just the Futch family and her granddaughter and his husband and her husband and two boys that were out there. I've forgotten their names. Two cute kids you have to row across to Andy's dock every morning to get to school.
Now, you still live in the Robin's Nest at the Hayfords.
Yeah. When I first came, I was down on the
Yeah,
shore
yeah.
near Andy's dock,
Mhm.
and my first memory of Dessa Rossi was I walked out on my dock one beautiful morning, and there was Dessa showering in her bra and bikini. And Dessa was quite a large woman, and it was rather a frightening sight.
Didn't quite know what to do.
Oh, these strange little memories. Oh dear, I've forgotten. Sorry.
In 1960 was Donna, the hurricane. You stayed through that?
Yes, most of us stayed. Gene Hayford used to have open house at hurricane time, and lots of people would gather there. I lived, as I said before, down near Andy's Dock, and that house that Bob Sabatino has now was in perfect condition all through the hurricane, but Ted Levering suggested that it would not be a good idea to stay alone, so I went up to his house.
And where was he? Was he near you?
Yes, he lived up on Palm Avenue at Mid-Island Cottages. And we got in. I brought my car up because it had a radio and we could try to follow the broadcasts. And the car was parked right outside the door, and I'd rush out every now and then to try to get the latest word on where the hurricane was or what it was doing. And in the meantime, the rain was coming down in torrents, and his roof leaked, and part of the ceiling fell in the bathroom when he was occupying it. It was very embarrassing. But the worst part of the hurricane that I can remember was the incredible roar and whine of the wind. The water got up eventually, came up over the ran down Palm Avenue, uprooted some big pines, but it never got above the last step as he went into the house.
Of your house?
Of Ted Levering's house. My yard was flooded. I had quite a lot of very beautiful hibiscus. An earlier partner of mine and I had decided we were going to have a hibiscus garden, but all the hybrids died. The salt water had come up. However, the reds, the old-fashioned reds, survived. It was amazing. And apparently it did the St. Augustine grass a great deal of good because it was more lush than ever after the salt water left.
Moral to the story is always water your grass with salt water.
Yeah. The hurricane was really something. We were asked to evacuate, but none of us, the old-timers, intended to leave. But I remember having to take my colored workers, there were 3 of them living in what had been the servants' quarters of the old Captiva Lodge, had to take them down to Sanibel to catch a helicopter that took them over to the mainland. Well, when they came back, they were absolutely furious because the shelter, wind broke windows and blew the rain in, and they were perfectly miserable in the shelter. And here we were perfectly comfortable over here.
How long did that last storm last?
Oh, that I don't remember. It was a good part of the night.
But it did a lot of destruction.
Oh, yes. The road was impassable for several weeks. We had no electricity, of course. Fortunately, in those days, most of us had gas refrigerators, so we could keep food. But there was no electricity for quite a while. I guess it was 3 weeks or more.
Oh, my goodness.
The pines, a lot of the pines along, not a lot, but some of the pines along the road had blocked the road. We used to have to drive through people's yards and that sort of thing to get around. It was a long period that I remember we had no place to dispose of all the trees and stuff that was damaged. And we burned it in a gray burning patch up on the Lime Grove, up just north of the Weeks. And that, I remember, was still burning at Christmas with the trash from September 10th. Huge fires, because it was the only place to dump stuff.
Were there many people that stayed on the island during that storm?
Well, most of the residents stayed. Yes.
Anybody hurt?
Not that I know of. We checked on the people that were living alone, tried to see that they were all right. And I don't think anyone was hurt, on the island at least.
That's frightening. Of course, we're right into the hurricane season right now.
Right, and it's just tomorrow is
the anniversary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hate September. It's 1 month I would love to be away.
Well, I think it's 1 month that we sort of sit and hold our fingers, cross our fingers, because you never know what's going to happen.
The water system, of course, wasn't here, so we all had our own either individual wells or were piped into some deep well had aeration tanks, and a lot of them also had cisterns for rainwater. One of the memories was for the Ross girls' house has a huge cistern under the porch, and one of the things we had to do was to be sure to turn off the downspouts after the robins came through, because they were used to come here in by the thousands. And, you had to be careful not to hang your laundry out or anything like that during their. But anyway, during the hurricane, we all had water. If we didn't need the electric pump, but the water pressure for the deep wells was still pretty strong. I remember my house had a second floor bathroom, and it ran all one summer, but the sulfur coated that bathroom. It was black, but there was pressure enough so that most of us had water of one kind or another. Those of us who had cisterns were even more lucky.
And electricity you did not have?
No, we had no electricity, obviously. Mm-hmm. And I think it was a good 3 weeks before they were able to get the lines strung again.
Well, that'd be kind of interesting, though. Be without electricity for a while, as long as you had lamps and things like that.
Well, we all had lamps, of course.
Yeah.
Might run out of kerosene, but we had lamps.
Oh, but you couldn't if you had the island store.
Well, the island store didn't carry kerosene.
Oh, that would be something I would think
you
would be very
had to get that
important.
down at one of the filling stations.
Oh, I see. Well, how long has that island store been there? Is that the original site for it?
Yeah, I think Mr. Darling either had it built or financed it. And it was Parker Mills who was running it when I came. Now, one of the first properties I looked after was Mr. Darling's property out, which is now owned by Mr. Rauschenberg.
It's the fish house.
That has the fish house out.
In the bay.
Yeah. And one of the reasons I'm pretty sure that Mr. Darling built the island store is that his original house on the mainland was constructed very much the same way, with the wide boards. Mr. Darling, I don't think ever lived for very long on the island because I understand his wife didn't like the fish house. It moved when you walked.
Don't they all? They're up on stilts.
Yeah. But Mrs. Van Vleck had the property for a while, and after she died, I believe her husband sold it to Mr. Rauschenberg. There was a deep well which had very good water on the place, and at one time they wanted to get the flow increased, so they dug down another 100 feet or so and spoiled the water completely.
Oh, my goodness. Well,
But the orange grove, or the citrus grove there, eventually was dying out because the roots were then getting down into the salt water. But Mr. Dowling had planted a great many citrus trees. They were nice bearers for a long time.
It certainly looks a lot. Excuse me. It certainly looks a lot better now than it did for a while since Rauschenberg built it. Well, thank you very much, Paul, for telling us all of your little stories and about the life on Captiva many years ago. And,
well, I'm very much at a loss because my mind is wandering. My memory is gone. So a lot of the things may be apocryphal. I don't know. But with all the change and with all that has happened in these 22 3 years. I couldn't think of living anywhere else.
Well, that's nice to hear. Thank you again. If you hear any birds in the background, they are blue jays and there are cardinals. And we are sitting in the lovely home of the Loomises right now, looking out at the Gulf Bay. It's,
And the birds are here.
and the birds are here.